Hey everybody, welcome back to Morning Calm Studios channel here on YouTube. Just wanted to say thanks everybody for tuning in, checking it out. Today we're going to be unpacking EQ. Kind of one of those things that is a little bit more misunderstood, but here's the thing. It is probably the most important plugin that you can have if you're looking to get a great mix. Forget compression, forget spatial stuff. There's really nothing better than an EQ to kind of carve out some of those frequencies and get your sound to sit in the mix before you even start flipping dials and everything. So something really important to mention here is it's more effective as well if you've already gain normalized your channels. So this is one of those concepts that I think gets really overlooked, to be gain normalizing before you even start mixing. I think it's a very important concept. So how do we fix that? How do we kind of understand as we make these changes to keep it to where our channels, our individual files don't start at one level and then we do all kinds of stuff to it and then it's like crazy loud. We got to dial that back. So there's a way to tamp it down, because EQ, in my opinion, is the most important plugin that you can possibly have. I wanted to start from that aspect so we can start to get that concept in our heads. All right, so I've got a couple EQs here pulled up, already assigned on a channel, great sounding vocal. So I've got a little snippet of it here set up. So let's go ahead and take a listen.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency.
All right, so vocal narration, nice and deep, boomy, just really deep up on the mic. So you can do all kinds of cool stuff with your voice. Love voice acting, love narration. So part of that is we have all kinds of frequencies that are going to be boosted and reduced as we move in and out of the microphone. But at the end of the day, with some good EQing, what we can do is we can kind of smooth out some of that. So if we've got areas that are just boosting up overall, we want to get rid of them. So the first EQ that I have pulled up here is just the general EQ that comes with Logic. There isn't really anything special about this plugin. In fact, I think that's what's most remarkable about it, is there isn't anything special about it. It's not really going to color my signal. So let's take a listen by just kind of jumping back and forth between the plugin on and off to see if we can hear a difference.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency.
Don't really hear anything, right? And that's what I love about it. So any change that I'm going to make, it's going to have a much better impact because I'm not coloring the overall file first and then doing it. Some people like to work the other way. They want things that are really colorful. Not me. I want to start off at a very, very 0 point. Got a very nice set of headphones here to help facilitate that. So the second thing that I really love about it is it has a built-in visualizer. So if yours isn't playing, you go down here, it says Analyzer Post. So as we're playing it,
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
You can turn it on and off. So if you need a little bit more visual cue to help you carve things out, great. If you don't, you just want to wing it, absolutely. The other thing that's cool is there's a pre-post on here as well, so it allows you to turn on and off. Are you on seeing the EQ before it's applied, or are you going to see it after? So that way you can do an A/B comparison to what you've done. So cool stuff. First thing I want to mention is the number of bands and what they represent. So if we look at the low end of frequency down here and the high end of frequency, you can kind of get a good idea of where we fall on the frequency spectrum here. So if you're working on low end content, you're going to want to stay down in this area. Maybe there's too much bottom end in it and you want to cut that out. You're on there. This is your mid-range sections. We got 3 bands specifically there. And then we've got the high frequency section. There is one more on each end of the extreme. So we do have our low pass and high pass filtering. So you can turn those on and off as completely separate bands if you'd like, if you've got something that you really want to carve out. So let's kind of jump into messing around with this and see what happens here.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency, conflicting agendas.
All right. So that was very destructive what I did, right? So I took all of that bottom end and I just scooped it out. You can see I changed this to 48, so I made it so it's basically it's what's called a brick wall. I just made it to where it's like as flat as I can vertically get it and just start chopping. So a lot of times that can be extremely unmusical. So what we want to do is we want to change it into something that's going to be a little bit less savage, has a nicer slope on it, but let's go ahead and bring it all the way back. And we're going to run that again, and then I'm going to A/B it.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency, conflicting agendas, tribal rivalry.
All right, once again, extremely destructive. So how a lot of people use these, myself included, is I just want to cut out that tiny little piece in there if there's like kind of some junk data.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
And that is literally about as far as I want to go with that. I just want to use it very, very lightly because I've got whole other bands here that I can use. So this is actually the low frequency that just kind of falls naturally within those 6 primary bands that we use here.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
All right, interesting. So now I can add a little bit more punch. This is where punchiness sits in a mix. So when everybody says, I need a little bit more punchy, that's where you're going to start messing around. There's also kind of like this little junk section too here that I want to mention really quickly. So this area, I use the Q or the quality. I pull that in a little bit and make it tighter so it's not wide because I use one really important rule here, which is you boost wide, cut shallow. So I want to bring this in a little bit so I can kind of notch out those frequencies right around that 250 range. All right, so in this case, I had to come down kind of a little bit more, just wasn't a spot that I was really liking all that much. So you can kind of see it's got a little boost there, but even this is still a little bit too harsh. I want to drop it down to somewhere around like 3 dB.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban.
Then I've got the high end. I want to start to kind of mess around with that. So let's take a listen to, I'm going to go ahead and turn these bands off so that way we can kind of really take a listen to what's happening in the top end without what I've done on the bottom already.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal...
Woof. Okay, so that's what happens when you start to mess with the high end, right? You get all this, like, it's that nails on the chalkboard type thing. So don't want to ever go that savage. Usually I'm between 6 and 12 on my extremes in decibel range increases because it's going to start to do another effect, which is overgain. And we'll apply a low pass filter and see what happens here. Also, remember your keyboard shortcut, you can hit the Option or Alt key and click, and it will zero it out for you. Nice handy trick.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency, conflicting agendas, tribal rivalry, and blood feuds.
All right, so it just went underwater, right, and then came back. That's basically what happens is high frequency content, it will stop because it's not a high energy wave. If there's anything in the way, it will stop momentum. So that's why you hear low frequencies when you're rolling up on a concert. You hear low frequencies when you're underwater. They just have more energy to them, so they travel further. So that's what gives you the underwater effect because I'm cutting out those frequencies, reducing the volume of them, and therefore killing the energy.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency, conflicting agendas, tribal rivalry.
All right, so there, once again, got a little bit into that brick wall, decided it was a little too much, bring it down just a little bit. There are other bands that I would like to kind of boost up a little bit. So you can see I'm already kind of starting to develop this kind of like scoopy thing.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency, conflicting agendas, tribal rivalry, and blood feuds. This is the Canadian Forces area of operation. We wear it, and every day we drive deeper into the furnace of enemy country. It's one hell of a rough road. Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency, conflicting agenda.
All right, so really what I want to do is just kind of quickly run through all those changes, kind of get it dialed in pretty close to where I want it to be. Now remember, a lot of these changes I'm just kind of focusing on the file, but really bigger concept is how is it going to fit against everything else. Since this is vocal narration, I kind of get a little bit more leeway to make decisions and say, okay, this is how I want it to sound. But once you start adding in guitars, you start to add in all these other instruments, a lot of that's going to change. You're kind of seeing what's already happening. This is kind of a gentle EQ. I don't have any crazy extremes because I selected a good mic, something that was higher quality, just kind of had a really nice natural EQ for my voice and for vocal narration, which was Mojave Audio MA-50, the black version. Absolutely love this mic. Just wanted to show EQ because now something else is happening, which is amplitude. So this is where we go back to that gain conversation, and we have a nice handy tool right here.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency, conflicting agendas, tribal rivalry, and blood feuds.
So hopefully you're listening on a source that can you can really hear what's happening in there. It's two things. Number one, it's getting a more polished, a little bit more professional sound, but it's also doing something else really interesting. And we can see it over here in the metering. So see how we're now at 1.3 decibels. So here's what happened is as we've been adding in all of these frequencies, we're increasing the overall gain of the file. Now remember, we start at 0 dB, and now we've added 1.3 decibels of gain. It is noticeable. So with this handy little slider, we can actually do what's called gain staging, and we can reduce that overall by around 1.3 dB, and now we've just leveled back out our file, but still have that great processing.
Kandahar Province, southern Afghanistan, the birthplace of the Taliban. It's 54,000 square kilometers of brutal insurgency, conflicting agendas, tribal rivalry, and blood feuds.
Man, what a concept, right? So we're still staying at 0 dB as this is playing back, but we've applied our EQ. That right there is money. That is what's going to separate you as an audio engineer from the other folks that are out there trying to do this, because there's a lot of people who love doing this, but getting pointed in the right direction so you're not making these fundamental mistakes, absolutely vital. So hope that you saw some stuff that you can kind of put into your workflow on EQs. You know, there's always a ton to learn on these things, but like I said, this is very important because if you have two guitars and you're trying to get them to separate from each other, you've got a vocal and a guitar, or you got a bass and a kick drum, being able to carve things out first and make sure that the sound is right and they play together really well just makes anything that you're going to add on later even that more effective. So once you get into compression, gating, other things like that, if you've already got a solid sound, you get a little bit more that you can play around with. So always love showing these videos, these concepts to you guys. If you've got any questions, you need anything at all, please feel free to reach out, 260-217-2692. Give me a buzz. Also, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, get those notifications as well. If you like this, we're going to keep doing this 10-minute training series as often as possible. Absolutely love it. So hit me up, send me your comments, and then also give me your suggestions on what you'd like to see. Till next time, guys, keep doing a great job. Keep at it. As long as you never quit, you will be successful.